Shelley Mayer, and Leader Sage, and just wanted to say welcome. This is the governor's fifth appearance on this matter. We all know how critically important this issue is, especially when it comes to making sure our kids have access to great education and great teachers, but we want to eliminate distractions, and this certainly is a huge issue for us here in Yonkers, and I'm sure that will come out in the roundtable. So I've been told 30 seconds or less, so that's what I'm doing, sticking to it, and I'm going to turn it right over to our great governor.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mayor, I've come to this city for many, many years, and it is literally transformed before my eyes. I was just commenting on the daylighting, the project that I came as a brand new lieutenant governor to unveil years ago, and just to see the vibrancy of downtown Yonkers, it is so exciting. The flowers, the bridge, the energy, and I want to just commend this great city for really punching through some hard times and coming out in a very, very positive way. And to have our leader here as well, her hometown, and I want to thank Andre Stewart Cousins for being such a tremendous partner in government. And I don't say that lightly. It's sometimes overused, and I mean it sincerely. We've deepened a friendship that has really served the people of all of our communities across the state of New York. I want to thank you for being here, and the many members who've attended here today. I mean, this is a great turnout of our elected leaders. I want to make sure I don't miss anybody. We have our Senator Shelley Mayer, Assembly Member Nader Sayegh, Gary Pretlow, Assembly Member, Chris Ika, Assembly Member, Chris Burdick, Assembly, of course our County Executive, and I think the Mayor of White Plains is here as well. Tom Roach, are you here? Is he on his way up? All right. All right. Well, we'll get to Tom when he gets here. Why are we here? I want to thank the people who've come. I want to thank the school districts for attending here. You'll be hearing from everybody in a couple minutes, and our partners from the teacher community. NYSIT is represented here, as well as many parents. And this is a conversation about the future of our children. It's that simple. What I have heard in these 5 roundtables now in every corner of the state is that we have a real crisis on our hands. It started when we worked with the legislature to deliver funding for mental health services. Why did the state of New York have to do that? Because we're seeing that people of all ages, all walks of life, but particularly our children, were so adversely affected by this pandemic. And if you talk to a teenager today, whether they were in 5th grade when it hit or whether they were in 10th grade, it has still had a profound effect on their psychological well-being. That security blanket of everything being normal, and the rituals and the routines and the graduations and the friendships and the classrooms, it all dissipated at an important time in their own development, and they're just not back yet. At the same time, we had this confluence of the algorithms that are coming from social media feeds, addictive algorithms, something that we talked about, not just funding mental health services, but also saying what is happening with our children where they feel so compelled and a compulsion to have that cell phone in their hands all day long, including the school day. And we look back at this, and I joined a number of members from the legislature. We worked with Tish James, our Attorney General, last fall and proposed nation-leading social media legislation that I'm proud we got through. The legislature signed into law just a month and a half ago. And what it says is to the social media companies, number one, you can no longer monetize our children's mental health, that you cannot collect data about them and sell it to others for your personal gain. But also, you're not allowed to be able to bombard these young people with messages that they have not asked for. They can still go to social media sites, but to have this all day long, a stream of content intentionally bringing them in to hold them captive and not release them, whether it's during the school days or after hours or in the middle of the night. And we have to stop that, and that's exactly what we're doing. And the legislation was passed, signed into law, and now the regulations are being developed. So why are we here today? The reason that the young people are so addictive and cannot let the phones down or these feeds down is that they have the phone, they have the vehicle. They say 13 to 17-year-olds, 95% of them have access to a cell phone. And they're not putting it down when it comes to school time. School districts are struggling. Some have already taken some bold measures. I want to hear about that. I want to know what those have done. I've heard this around the state. It is going cold turkey in some districts. where they've said no distractions, no smartphones, no earbuds, no cell phones at all in the classroom during the day. And the results have been profound, but I want to hear from you what you're seeing in your districts about how we should be shaping policy with one objective in mind, is that let our children be children, let them learn in a classroom, let our teachers be able to have the attention that they've been denied for a long time with children that are distracted, and let the parents get their children back, the carefree young ages that they should have had, but now, or children they should have had, and now kids are not even able to look up at the dinner table and make eye contact because it's had an effect on their social and personal development when they're not interacting with students during the day or friends after school in person, and that's the big difference. So I'm ready to kick it off and thank our moderator here for hosting us, number one, and we have Dr. Michelle Lazzulo. Did I say it right?
You did.
Okay. The Associate Superintendent of the Yonkers City School District to moderate the conversation, call on our principals with some questions, and I'm here to listen. I'll jump in every once in a while, but again, this is a listening session for us in elective office. Thank you. Yep.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us at today's roundtable discussion on cell phones in schools. My name is Dr. Michelle Yazurlo, Associate Superintendent for Yonkers Public Schools, and I have the pleasure for moderating this important conversation on behalf of our Superintendent, Mr. Annabelle Soler Jr., and our Board of Education. First, I would like to thank Governor Hochul and her team for organizing this event. Your leadership and commitment to addressing educational challenges are truly appreciated. I would also like to thank the State Senate Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins, whose support has been and continues to be invaluable. Additionally, we have the honor of welcoming the Mayor of Yonkers, Mike Spano, and several other elected officials. Your presence today underscores the significance of this issue. To set the stage, let's consider a striking statistic. A recent study found that 80% of New York State high schools have implemented some form of cell phone restriction policy. This statistic highlights the growing concern and diverse approaches towards managing cell phone use in our educational environments. As we dive into the discussion, I'd like to remind our panelists that you will have 2 to 3 minutes to answer each question. Additionally, please be prepared to follow up questions from the governor or other officials.
All right, and to kick us off, I want to introduce our Majority Leader to start us off the conversation with our panelists and ask her for her thoughts on today's event.
Thank you so much, Governor, and again, thank you for being here, always present, and thanks for being in the city of Yonkers, yes, my hometown, and so Mayor and the County Executive and my colleagues in the state legislature. You see the head of the teachers union, Rosanna, I'm sorry, Samantha, my friend Sam, and Robin representing the PTA, and of course the Board of Trustees represented by Rosalba, Ms. Del Vecchio, and so many of you. The governor wanted it short, as the mayor said, and I was just thinking, I have a youth advisory council, and every year we talk about the things that would be most important for us to cover during the time that we meet. And to a person, every young person has said mental health in some way, whether it's anxiety, whether it's bullying, whether it is something that they know is out of their control, but so connected to social media. And every year we begin with the comprehensive look at where they might be able to find resources in our community. And I'm so grateful that we have such a robust community with services where they can start addressing this mental health and take away the stigma. What the governor, as she was talking about the things that we've done, also mental health clinics, $20 million into school-based mental health clinics. When we talked about health clinics, usually it was always, making sure you had your vaccinations, making sure, but now to address some of the statistics that we all know, we are now putting resources into mental health clinics. But we know that regardless of what legislation we pass, and we worked hard to pass it, regardless of what we think we have done, there is so much more to do. And there are possibilities for us to help our school community, get through so that they could do what they are poised to do, which is educate our children. The last thing I will say before we kick it off, and thank you, Dr. Uzzarlo, for that, is that we, the grown-ups, are as guilty as our children. And people, learn what they live. So as we continue to talk about what to do about them, we who are addicted around the table and beyond have to take a look at what we're modeling as well.
Excellent. Well said. All right. That's it.
All right, everybody, we're going to get started. First question is going to go to Dr. Rosalba Corrado Del Vecchio. She is the Yonkers Board of Education president. Dr. Del Vecchio.
who are so distracted that 72% of teachers are saying that has it affected their ability to effectively teach our young people the class manner they're supposed to. So it's become a real issue for us, and this is on top of our very focused effort to ensure that we have the resources for mental health. Last year, as you know, we were able to secure $1 billion, first time ever, that level of commitment for New Yorkers at every level of the continuum, but even specifically $50 million through various programs, including in-school mental health clinics for our young people to focus on the stresses that our young people are going through right now in real time. And we talked about that again here today in Yonkers, about the stress that kids are under, the fear of missing out, the anxiety they have when someone criticizes them, and there's bullying, and there's agitation and fights because they want to catch it on their cell phones. And the school districts that spoke about having a prohibition on this, like Middletown, talked about the fact that young people are communicating more in the hallways and in the lunch periods, and just actually acting like children again without the compulsion to be staring at their cell phone and communicating online throughout the day when they should be learning. So I wanted to just have an opportunity for Leader Andre Stewart-Cousins here in her hometown, as well as members of the Senate and the Assembly, to join me in these listening tours, as we have all over New York, to be able to hear firsthand from the people most impacted about how this has become a crisis of mental health for young people. It's a crisis that we had to deal with because the social media companies have developed addictive algorithms, which we have banned in nation-leading legislation. But now the next question is, what about the instrument that allows that information to be in front of children 24 hours a day, and it should not be there during the classroom time? So happy to take any questions about on topic.
Regarding the path forward, what are you considering? I know you brought in lawmakers. Are you considering waiting until after the school year starts and, taking this up during the legislative session? Or is this something you're looking to do immediately with an executive order? And, what are you considering in terms of a ban in schools?
This is an option I'm considering with legislation. This is why it would take now until the next session in January to be able to talk about this in a way, because we've looked into executive orders, and the most effective and proper way to do it is through legislation. But that being said, there is no reason why every school district in the state of New York can't act on their own. Some of them have very successfully, and I think this is an opportunity during this off season when we're not in the session, for us to talk about how that should be happening now, and that parents should be starting to engage and think about their role in helping wean children from cell phones a little bit more at home, so there's not such an adjustment when they get to school. So these are some of the issues we just spoke about now, but the reason I'm engaging the legislators, I believe this calls for a legislative solution.
And are you concerned about parents, being concerned about not being able to reach their child during the school year? Because, there are safety concerns in schools, especially in this climate right now. So, what do you say to parents that might feel uncomfortable about the thought of not being able to communicate with their kids during the school day?
This is very top of mind for me as New York's first mom governor. My children were, I believe, in middle school when the attack at Columbine occurred. And your stress level goes off the charts when you hear about the mass shootings in schools, because this is your most precious possession, is your child. And to know that they're in danger is just so frightening. But I also will tell you this. My first instincts were wrong on this. What I realized in listening to law enforcement, who have been brought into the school districts where they do have a prohibition on distractive devices, that the worst thing your child can do in a mass shooting event or any kind of crisis is to be looking on their cell phone, communicating with mom and dad. They need to be listening to the adult in the front of the room to lead them to safety. And that is pretty much the uniform position of law enforcement. So this is, again, another re-education for parents to understand that your child is safer. And there's other school districts that have instituted prohibitions, have found ways that parents can communicate, whether there's breaks during the day, or they can communicate with the office, they can send an email to the teacher if they need to know something. But we all grew up without this. My children grew up without this. You leave your lunch at home, you borrow the lunch money, or you try to remember it the next day. So there's also over communication that goes on throughout the day that I think is can be debilitating for students as they need to really focus on what the teacher's trying to impart to them from the front of the classroom.
Anything else on phones in schools?
What were you learning at the roundtable, and how's this conversation going so far?
You know, I was listening to school districts that have taken various steps, including Middletown School District is represented here and New Rochelle. They talked about their prohibition on distractions in schools and the enforcement challenges, but how it's so important to get the buy-in from the parents. And so many of them have had countless hours of listening sessions, you know, some in person, some virtual, trying to engage parents and let them understand that this is having a detrimental effect on their children's emotional development. They're not making interpersonal connections with other students. They're being held back in terms of emerging as fully functioning adults when they graduate, when they've not had the chance to really even talk to students at the lunch table and to develop friendships that'll last beyond the classroom, because they're all so focused on what is happening on YouTube and TikTok and following their friends, but then on the other hand, being bullied and subjected to a lot of negativity, which is really taking our young people, especially our teenage girls, into a dark place. The data shows that teenage girls 3 times more likely to commit suicide or contemplate suicidal thoughts than they had been years ago. The numbers are astronomical and indisputable. So parents are so important to this. I believe that teachers would like to see this at the state level, many of them, so we can, you know, help them manage this with their local school boards and parents as a statewide policy. So that's why I'm looking very seriously at this.
So Governor Hochul, after today's discussion, as well as being a mother yourself, going off of all of this, what is your biggest piece of advice for parents to be able to help their children not be on their phones as much, whether it's in school or, like you said earlier, at the dinner table?
It's also modeling your own behavior as a parent. Catch yourself how many times that your infant or your young child or your teenager is there in the same room with you and you're being distracted. Children learn what they see. And I would put that advice out there front and center as someone who, you know, has my own children, adults, but a grandbaby. I'm very cognizant of not showing I have another interest other than her. So let's start there. But also, especially during the summer times, I was mentioning how when we were getting closer to the school year, I'd start putting my kids to bed earlier and earlier so they got acclimated to an earlier start day with the school year. Parents, if your kids are distracted, and we have a program that we're hoping they listen to, Get Offline, Get Outside, start weaning the children now, and whatever age they are, get them outdoor activities. Let them be children again, because it'll stimulate more emotional growth in them than they are when they're just held captive in their bedrooms staring at a cell phone all day long. Help liberate your children by giving them other alternatives, other activities, but letting them know as it gets closer to the school year, they really should start being conditioned to spending less time, so it's not such a shock when that school day starts. And in some districts already in the state of New York, there is a prohibition on cell phones. They lock them in pouches. And so I think that's the way a lot of school districts are going when they realize that our children are not fully functioning, they're not learning, and they're becoming distressed, anxious, and having mental health challenges that they otherwise wouldn't have, that previous generations didn't have to deal with either.
All right, got time for like one off topic.
Governor, just to stay on topic, has there been any student-led coalitions that have chimed in one way or another on this?
I've done roundtables with students. I don't know of a formal organization, but I've done, the reason we got to this place, I started last year by having youth mental health roundtables in schools all over the state, and heard from young people the stress of feeling that someone's, you know, mocking out their clothes or teasing them or saying something really horrible. They can hear something like that first thing in the morning and it can set them off for the entire day. Also, we heard that there's been, in school districts that don't have cell phones, there's fewer fights. Young people are stimulating fights and controversy and conflict so they could film it and get it out there. Also, I heard from some students that they felt more self-conscious about participating in a music class or a drama class because someone's going to capture it on video, post it out there, and they're going to be mocked out for that. So they all have this on their minds. And as I've said, one student said to me, "You have to save us from ourselves. We cannot put this down. We cannot stop the bullying. We need the adults to help us get through this." And I, as a parent, cannot turn a deaf ear to a young person crying for help like that.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks, I appreciate you coming out. Thank you.